Okay, we're gonna pick up where we left off. Morgan had just messaged Ari, and because he was about to have that sort of sport thing with Caleb, but she's also trying to give him some space after the series of events that have happened. So I went to the lounge alone to work on my report. Oh, Vaughn looks so pretty. I love her shirt. Vaughn, that's not funny. The lounge, as it turns out, wasn't the best place for report writing. Not when your teammates found you and started up a conversation, which somehow ended up on the topic of your other teammate teleporting into your shower on accident. Are you kidding? It's hilarious. Vaughn, did he say anything? How many people do you know who wear anything in the shower? Oh, I thought this said say. That is not what that said at all. Did he see anything? How many people do you know who wear anything in the shower? He saw everything. Her reaction wasn't what I expected. I imagined less laughing. Why would you imagine less laughing though? This is totally like typical Vaughn. She grinned at me over the top of her glass. Lucky guy. I'm telling Mara you said that. That's fine with me. I was going to tell her and later anyway, and I'm sure she'd agree with me. No, you were not supposed to tell anyone. I don't know why, Morgan, you would tell Vaughn, though. Who was it that told us that? I think it was Caleb that told us that pretty much if you tell Vaughn, it's like telling the entire facility because she tells everyone. You just said you were going to tell her. Right, you just said you were going to tell her. You're horrible. She laughed again and took another sip of her drink. Her expression turned thoughtful, though there was still a hint of a smile there. So, what are you going to do about it? I don't know. He seemed really upset. Before that and during. Maybe I should just let it be. Please don't do that, Morgan. Please, girl. That is my biggest pet peeve. Like when there's an elephant in the room and there's like 4 chapters of everybody just pretending like it's not there. I hate that shit. If you want my take on it, I don't think that's the solution. You need to do something, even if it's just to sit down, talk about it, and end everything now. I don't want to do that. I don't want to just end it. Then isn't the only other option to talk about it, put your feelings out there, and try to make it work? Thank you, Vaughn. I wish it was that easy. Morgan, it is that easy, though. Like, you tell him how you feel, and he either says yes or no. Girl, it is that easy. Thank you, Vaughn. You have to seize the moment. Always. Let things try to work themselves out, and you may lose the opportunity. I know that much, but Ari seemed so upset by it all. Okay, well, if he's still really upset, he'll just say no, you know? But you do have to address it, you know? And he may not ever get past that point until you guys talk. You can't deny that he's been thinking about you a lot, though. I'm not sure what to do about this. If having me around is upsetting him this much, Ari is not used to the feelings thing, Morgan. He's not upset. He's probably scared. Yeah, that's what I think too. I doubt he even knows what to do about this kind of emotion. Listen, has he told you anything about himself? Oh god, very little. Are we gonna get Ari's whole past from Vaughn? I mean, I was hoping we'd get it from Ari and not Vaughn. Let me check. I want to see how much is left of this chapter. Okay, so we just started chapter 10. I'm so torn, guys. I figured as much. He barely talks about himself. I did notice that. Ari's been a part of Endgame for years, longer than any of the rest of us. He came here when he was, oh my gosh, he was a baby when he was around 2 or 3. That seems young. It is. For most of us, our abilities don't really surface until a little later in childhood. And we come here shortly after to join the academy. For Ari, being F class meant abilities awakened much earlier. Much. And imagine a toddler with his abilities. Having a toddler that could teleport around does seem like it would be tough. More than tough, he teleported his mother to Sierra once, on accident. What? She was fine in the end, but imagine. His parents couldn't begin to understand how to raise a child that could do things like that, and Endgame had never seen an Esper with that kind of ability before. His range and age aside, the method he uses for teleportation is also unusual. Fairies were very poorly understood at the time. There weren't many around yet, and no one knew much about them. Ari said that most of what Endgame knows about F-class Espers they learned from him. Because he spent most of his childhood in a lab. Oh god, okay. So I did have to funny story here. I for this episode as well as the next three, I already recorded them. I sort of binged the game for the next two chapters because I was so into how the plot progressed. And then when I went back to upload the videos, I realized that it didn't record my voice like at all. So I am re-recording these. But the first time that I played through this, I mean, it's so horrible that he spent his childhood in a lab. That's terrible. I'm sure it was. But it wasn't just so he could be studied, Morgan. He was dangerous. Very dangerous. Okay, I mean, I understand that. I get that. But it feels like there had to have been other solutions that wouldn't have involved him being studied in a lab. Um, other sort of safety precautions that they could have used that wouldn't involve them treating him like a science experiment. He didn't know how to use or control his abilities. He used them on accident all the time, and he didn't understand the consequences of teleporting someone into orbit or into a wall. I imagine what could happen when he was upset. It's not like kids that young have much emotional intelligence. They're children. But I mean that's exactly my point as well though. They are children. So you should be treating them like children, not like um some sort of experiment. But regardless of his age, it doesn't change that he hurt people, sometimes severely. They kept him isolated and, at some point, started suppressing his emotional responses for everyone's safety, including his own. It was necessary, but can you imagine growing up like that? I can't. I'd always had a large and supportive family. I couldn't fathom what it was like to grow up alone, without affection, with everyone afraid of me. He was almost an adolescent when they began to let him interact with others. That was when the rest of us met him for the first time, and he was a disaster. He had no clue how to socialize. He didn't even understand emotions at that point. Yeah, so I feel so bad. I feel like such a horrible person for all the times that I called him like dense or emotionally awkward, because like then we come to find out that it's because he spent his entire childhood in a lab, and they never even allowed him to socialize with other people. So I mean, it makes total sense that then when by the time he's an adolescent and he finally has the opportunity to do so, he has no idea what he's supposed to do. They weaned him off the suppressors over time, gradually helping him get used to controlling his abilities, even with active emotional responses. But he bottles things up, even now. Back then, he had severe anxiety when overwhelmed, and he still does. I'm sure you've seen it before too. Yeah, so that totally explains the tapping. How he taps on his temple or on his hands. It's like a manifestation of the anxiety he feels. I'm sure he's never been in love before. He flat rejected anyone interested in him, and kept his distance from people that interested him. The only people he's gotten close to are people who are safe in that regard. But he can't keep his distance from me. He can't. And now he's so tied up in knots inside that he's unconsciously teleporting because he's thinking about you. So this answers the question from the previous chapter where I was like, was it him teleporting into Morgan's shower? Or was Morgan the one that teleported him there? Do you know how long it's been since he did that? I don't know how to talk to him about this. I don't want to make it worse. And I also feel a little bad for being like just just dive right in and see what happens because the situation is so much more complicated than I initially thought. Sometimes things like this are messy. It's necessary to work through the mess and come out on the other side. She reached across the table and took my hand, giving them a light squeeze. Loving someone like Ari won't be easy. But that's true of most people here. We've all endured a lot. But I think you'll be good for him. And I think he's a good match for you, as long as you have the patience to help him through this. Patience isn't the issue. I just don't want to hurt him. I'm rooting for you. Aw, thank you, Vaughn. It took me a long time to work out how to talk to Mara about how I felt. But I managed it, Morgan. Look at us now. You'll figure it out too. Thanks. And then the conversation turned to Trent and the attack on Endgame's system. I shared with her some of what happened during my earlier meeting with them, and assured her Trent had behaved himself. As expected, many people viewed the open investigation into the Sierra Esper situation as Endgame siding with the Triad, even though that wasn't it at all. It had made the situation worse for the teams there, and now they had protests to deal with on top of everything else. There were a lot who wanted them to pull out and go home. More than that, some were questioning whether Endgame had jurisdiction on Sierra at all. A shocking turn, since Endgame's jurisdiction was accepted everywhere else, even Dion and the asteroid mining facilities. Dion is the fifth planet circling the star in Arcalis' solar system. It is slightly smaller than Arcalis and has a much colder climate. It, too, has some domed cities similar to those on Arcalis, but its surface sustained severe damage in what colonists believed to have been some sort of war prior to their arrival. As such, it was viewed as less suitable for habitation. The colony there was much smaller, and was founded sometime after colonists settled on Arcalis. There are almost no nanites in the Dion atmosphere, so there are very few nanoespers on this colony. Its surface is dotted with ruins of previous civilizations, including one highly advanced culture that predates the biodomes and Tholosan culture by thousands of years. In addition, there are numerous remnants of the Senecan culture, the only primitive culture that have been discovered in the solar system. The same primitive culture present on Arcalis. Very little has been learned about this mysterious civilization, and Dion is a hotspot for researchers of all types. So I do wonder if in this route or in any of the other routes, if we're going to get more information on the prior civilization that was on Dion, or the other one, because there's one that was more advanced, and there was one that was what they referred to as primitive. The situation was becoming much bigger than anyone thought. Even on the surface, protests had cropped up. Apparently a lot of citizens sympathized with the Sierra dissidents, and were gathering in solidarity. But they had plenty of people against them as well. Some called Endgame's investigation a sham, a front for shutting down the rebellion on behalf of the Triad. Others hoped Endgame found evidence and the dissidents were involved in illegal experimentation, because it would give weight to the Triad's retaliation. The very idea of a ceasefire was far away at this point. With the rise in protests, the Triad was implementing stronger methods of dealing with the dissidents, and fighting was growing even more intense. It was a mess. I had a lot to contemplate by the time I returned to my place. I was at the forefront of my thoughts after that talk with Vanessa. I wondered if I should send him a note, ask him if he wanted to come over for dinner or just talk. It was ironic that I pulled up a message template to do just that when I got a note from Trent instead, asking again if I would please meet him for dinner. He wanted to talk to me. I couldn't justify rejecting the offer again, when this was a potential opportunity to learn more about his colleagues. With a sort of frustrated reluctance, I responded that if he wanted to talk, we could meet in the lobby for a while. I thought he might reject it, since it wasn't the intimate dinner he wanted. I was surprised when he accepted right away. I resolved to be sure to tell him in no uncertain terms that we were over, if it came up. It's not exactly what I was hoping for, but thanks for coming down. I didn't have a reason to say no. Oh? You've been trying pretty hard to avoid me. Is that not reason enough? I sighed, hating how this assignment was so at odds with all the things I wanted to say in the face of that comment. I'm not avoiding you, but there isn't a lot of reason to spend time together outside of work, and I have a lot of other things on my plate. I'm still in the middle of an intense training program, too. You know, earlier Matt suggested you were only overseeing us because you were told to spy on us, because of the Sierra conflict, because we're from there, and maybe our research is suspicious. Matt said that? He clearly hated Endgame, But he was that suspicious of us? Well, he's pretty sympathetic to the cause up there. Gina and I might be from New Albion, but he was born on Sita, so, you know. Yeah, so that makes a lot more sense as far as the hostility that he's shown towards Endgame. Um, and it does make me wonder as far as if he's the one that hacked into the system. But with the way you've been avoiding me, I can't imagine that he's right. I wanted so much to ask more about Matt and Gina, but I could read the mood. Trent wasn't talking about Matt. I mean, he was, but that wasn't his point. He was trying to talk about us. If I derailed the subject to pepper him with questions about the others, it would definitely look strange. You know, after everything settles on Sira, if the dissidents win, they're saying they'll probably offer asylum to any Esper who wants it. Espers like you. Espers who want to live a normal life. Well, Trent, I think at this point it's probably a little too late for that. This subject again. That has nothing to do with me, though. Have you really just accepted that you're going to be here permanently? I didn't accept it. I decided it. I chose to be here. I don't know that I completely agree with that statement, because, I mean, they did kidnap Morgan. I mean, she chose to be here versus going to the other three factions that were after her. That's not really the same as just deciding to join of her own volition. Because there were no other... I don't think this is the place to discuss this, Trent. I guess you've already made up your mind, then. I'm sorry. He laughed, a little sadly. You always were the sort to just walk forward, no matter what was there in front of you. I always loved... He swallowed hard. I always loved that about you. I'm sorry I called you down here for no reason. I know you're busy. And see, now he's making me feel bad for him. I mean, like I said, I don't know. It's just... She has Ari now. And I still don't know if Trent is involved in all this stuff that's going on up, you know, like hacking into the system, and if they're doing this experimentation, like we don't know yet. So, I mean, I feel bad for him because he really does seem to care about Morgan. But at the same time, I just don't trust him. No, it's all right. I'll let you get to doing whatever. See you, Morgan. He left a short while later, and for a long time I sat there, unsure what to feel. When he walked away, it was like watching the door shut on that part of my life. It hurt. It was sad. But somehow left me feeling like I was, at least, really ready to move forward. And after a while, I went back to my flat. Imagine my surprise when I found Ari standing outside in the hall, like he was unsure if he should knock. Were you waiting for me? I was hoping we could talk. You should have sent a message. I assumed you were with Trent. Oh, the awkwardness. I met with Trent in the lobby for a while. One of his colleagues was acting strange today, so I thought it might be good to try and get more information about him. I see. And were you successful? I learned some interesting things. It's difficult to strike a balance between prying for information but not seeming suspicious. If you're too tired to talk, then I can wait. I'm sure you still need to write up a report. I'm not tired, and I also want to talk to you. Why don't you come in? I can make us some tea. Thank you. Ari followed me inside, but stood by the door awkward and stiff. You can sit, you know. Of course. He did so, perching at the edge of the sofa, stiff and uncomfortable. I must apologize for what happened earlier. I'm afraid it's become obvious I need more training myself. I haven't done something like that in a very long time. I don't have room to judge when it comes to struggling with control. Nevertheless, you must have been horrified. I have 4 brothers. I'm used to having my privacy invaded. Okay, so it's confirmed. She does have 4 brothers. Because that was mentioned, like all of their names were mentioned when she was talking about them in an earlier episode, and I was confused at first. I see. Ari, I'm not angry. I was startled, of course. But I'm not horrified. I was worried about you more than anything, especially when you didn't respond to my message. I apologize. I wasn't sure what to say. I needed time to compose my thoughts. How was your volunteer match with Caleb? Ah, he mentioned that? You did. I lost, as expected. He shows no mercy, does he? None whatsoever. I took our teacups to the sofa and handed one to him. He accepted it hesitantly. Ari, are you all right? Really all right? I should inform you that I spoke with Caleb about our training. He'll be taking over for the time being. Now that the two of you have reconciled your differences, it might be wise to focus on rook training. It is, of course, the easiest to learn. When your focus is improved, I'll come back to teach you more about knight-based skills. I've asked to be allowed to focus on the Syrah incident. I believe this will prevent me from being overly tired. We'll obviously continue to work together, and I'll help you with your assignment where needed. I was definitely getting worried about how much you had on your plate, but that's not what I was referring to. I'm worried about you, and I know I'm the cause of some of your stress. Oh, we have new music! It's not like you haven't also been a source of distraction for me. I am? I mean, that is... I don't intend to be. I don't think anyone ever intends to be. I set my cup down and, after a very brief hesitation, took his hand, though I didn't want to overwhelm him. I didn't want to talk to you about my training schedule. I wanted to talk to you about us. I don't think we can continue to pretend there isn't something going on between us. I mean, that something may be as simple as attraction, or it might be more. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. I hope it's more. I hope that that's what you want as well. I am unsure. Oh, that hurt. I only know that my emotions have been somewhat out of control of late, where you're concerned. I believe I may be developing romantic feelings for you. Spoken like a true Romeo. Oh, Ari. He's as adorably awkward as ever. But, now we know why, and I just feel so bad for him. That kiss from before. I apologize for leaving after that. I was unsure how to... It was so difficult seeing him at a loss for words, when he was never at a loss for words. Ari, you don't need to apologize for that. Again, I was worried about you. I don't want to do anything that upsets you or makes you uncomfortable. You did nothing wrong. It was merely the moment I had to confront what I was beginning to feel for you. Even now, I'm unsure what to do about that feeling. You don't have to do anything if you don't want to. We can let things develop on their own, as slow or as fast as you want. I touched his face carefully, and he closed his eyes, swallowing hard. I can tell you're scared, but you don't need to be. I'm not going to force you to do anything that you don't want. I'm not frightened of you, Morgan. I've never felt this way before. I've never allowed myself to want something this strongly. The thought that my control may slip because I lose focus is ever present. And all this causes me to do and say things I never would, normally. It's disconcerting. Emotions tend to do that. I find myself annoyed when you spend time with Trent, even though I know it's for work. I find myself fixated on what you talked about with him, fixated on the fact that there were moments of yours I wasn't a part of. And even I can see this level of possessiveness can't be healthy. His words were coming out in a tumble, as if he'd been holding it all in for a long time and it was finally spilling out. It bothers me that you have a history with him, a history that has nothing to do with me. Our history is brief, and involves me terrifying you when we first met. Oh! It also involves you being kinder to me than anyone here, helping me through a difficult time, offering me guidance, even friendship. Is that not the source of your feelings for me? Isn't it possible you're mistaking gratitude for something else? Oh, is that what he thinks? Poor boy. No. I set my other hand on his face and made him look at me. That's not it. I know what I feel. You don't need to be jealous of Trent. Our history is different, but that's because we're different. You're the only one I'm thinking of right now, in the present. Oh, he's blushing. May I kiss you? I will not run away this time. Yes, of course. He bent and carefully brushed his lips against mine, like an experiment, to test the waters. There was a soft sigh, a shuddering breath before he kissed me with a little more confidence. His hands slid up my back to bring me closer. I let my hands rest against his chest, not wanting to go too fast for him. I pulled away for a brief moment and rested his forehead against mine. Then he cupped his hands around my face and kissed me one more time. There was more force behind this kiss, like he had realized it would be okay. It wasn't until that moment that it occurred to me just how much I'd been holding back with him, handling him like a fragile piece of glass. How afraid I was of hurting him, or making a fool of myself. When that desperate bit of heat finally made its way into a kiss, a wave of relief and happiness washed over me. I realized that maybe I'd convinced myself I was the only one feeling anything at all. Oh, Morgan! Or that he didn't actually want me. So sad. But he did. I wrapped my arms around him, letting out an involuntary murmur against his mouth as I surrendered myself to this moment. Under the tender assault of his lips, his gentle hands sliding almost timidly down my arms, trailing shivers behind them. Everything else faded. That empty place in my heart that held only the echo of the life I'd led before, filled with something else. I ran my tongue briefly along his lips, just grazing his. His fingers tightened against the backs of my arms, and he made a soft, wandering sound in his throat before mirroring the gesture. It didn't surprise me that he was a fast learner. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, just the context. The kiss had started out halting and clumsy, but it slowed to a languid exploration as his hands moved to my back to pull me closer. Every sensation was heightened. The way his fingertips traced the curve of my spine, the way the rim of his teeth scraped over my lower lip, and his tongue sliding along mine, then pulled away. The way his soft breaths mingled with mine, the hint of a gasp or groan on every one of them. It felt like a long, long time before we pulled apart, breathless and awed as we pressed our foreheads together. It was longer still before either of us spoke. This is so cute. I said this in my first recording, but this reminds me of like when you have your first either, boyfriend or girlfriend, your first crush, and you're sort of learning how everything works, and it has that feeling of like that innocence, if that makes sense. I think it's really cute. I believe I should go. I was so unsurprised to hear him say that I almost smiled. It was better than running away without a word. Will that be okay? I pulled away far enough to look into his eyes. Beautiful, beautiful silver eyes. Okay. So yeah, we can either say do you have to, or of course it's okay. Initially, I wasn't really sure which one to choose because I was like, okay, is it better to be expressive with our emotions since Ari is so not that way, to sort of help move the relationship along, or is it better for us to be like, of course it's okay, and sort of take it slow and give him some time? And after thinking about it, I definitely think that the second option is the best, because now that we know his background and his history, I think it's really important that we respect the fact that that he needs that time, and that it's not just him being shy, right? Like, it's the fact that he really has no experience with any of this. And it's a very scary thing to him, because when he does get emotional and he isn't able to control those emotions, like, bad things have happened in the past. So I really think we need to be patient with him and take it slow. Of course it's okay. I gave him a teasing smile. I hope you didn't expect I'd tie you down and make you stay. He returned the smile with a hesitant one of his own. I trust you haven't forgotten. It's somewhat difficult to restrain a knight. That's so cute. They're actually joking. And I hope you haven't forgotten that I'm a queen. His smile softened considerably when I said that. I, of course, would never forget that. I'm glad we talked tonight. Thanks for stopping by. I'm also glad. I fear I may prove overly clumsy with things as they progress. I hope you'll continue to be patient with me. And I hope you realize even people with quite a lot of relationship experience can still be clumsy with things sometimes. I can personally attest to that. Um, I am still so clumsy when it comes to a lot of this stuff. Oh, so yeah. Um, Please don't feel bad, Ari. Um, and I think Morgan, is totally willing to be patient with you. I don't have extreme amounts of experience either. Strangely, that is comforting. I leaned up and pressed another very soft kiss to his lips. And, for the record, it's always okay to need some space. I know this is all new to you. Thank you for understanding. Normally, I think a goodbye would have been slow or awkward, but in the end, Ari was Ari. He stood and went straight to the door without looking back. He's learning. We have to be patient and give him credit, okay? Baby steps. It was so very him that I had to hold his hand, or that I had to hold in the laugh. It would have seemed insensitive if it was anyone else, but it was Ari, and that made it adorable. I got up and followed him, though I doubted he expected me to. He stepped outside and looked back. I will see you tomorrow. If not before your training, then after. I'll see you then. He nodded, the same nod as always, before leaving me and heading down the hall to his apartment. But this time he paused when he reached the door, glancing my way again. Another nod, and he was gone. I bit my lip and, stomach still fluttering happily, went back into my own flat as well. It wasn't the ending I was expecting, but somehow it washed away all the other frustrations. I think I realized for the first time that I wasn't just starting to have feelings for him. The euphoria I was feeling after just one kiss and an instant goodbye, I was already in deeper than I thought, despite everything else. I didn't mind at all. Okay, let's save here. Whoops. So yeah, like I said, I did record. Oh, that's funny. I saved her the last time too. I guess I don't need to do it again. Anyway, I did record the next like 3 to 4 episodes last night, and I was totally eating it up. And then none of the recording saved, so I'm probably going to be taking it a little slower this time because I don't have that adrenaline propelling me forward, that itch to see what happens next. But I will say that things get really, really good. Like I was really enjoying it. So yeah, we got a lot of interesting information this episode. We got a lot of background on Ari. And I do feel kind of bad that we got it from Vaughn, because you never really want to find out about that sort of personal information from someone else as opposed to directly from the person themselves. But I think it's good that Morgan knows, because it will give her more context as far as understanding him and where he's coming from and where his head's probably at. And like I said, I feel so bad for every time I call this poor boy dense. Like, oh God. Anyway, I'm so happy that the distance between Morgan and Ari did not drag on for very long, because yeah, that's a huge pet peeve of mine, and thank goodness they have made up. They won't be training together anymore, which kind of sucks. But it sounds like they are both, cautiously optimistic as far as exploring what the future will hold for them. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed the episode, and I will see you next time.